Morning. Excuse me. I just got up maybe 20 minutes ago, so my throat's a little bit uncooperative. Which, considering my wife just told me that some of the videos she watched were not very easy to hear me, you get that sometimes. So this morning I'm working on some more thumbnails for the first couple pages of Into the Impossible. I actually penciled out so it's the inside front cover and then page one. I'm doing something a little different this book, so that when you open the cover, it's a double page spread immediately, just to kind of throw it straight into the action. The problem was with what I had penciled, it had an interesting sort of downward movement of the eye. It was a little too efficient in that, and the other thing is that it wasn't nearly as moving as frenzied, I think is the word we figured out last night, as I was aiming for. There's not enough craziness going on. So I'm trying to figure out something that will be more dynamic, I guess. It's kind of an odd scene because, in my mind and in the script, I was like, it's the Doctor Who Doctor running around the TARDIS scene. And now that I'm trying to draw that sort of thing, it's not very easy to do in just one image. Like, especially when one of the only two characters in the scene are being static. So I might have to move Barnaby and have him be moving. I don't know. So in this shot, I was doing a down shot basically an over the shoulder shot of Barnaby. He's sitting up on this cabinet, which gets put into play later on in the story. He's basically in the bottom right hand corner of the page, and then Idris is standing in the center section of the page, and there's dialogue balloons going through here because I've got like 5 or 6 dialogue balloons. And I also wanted to put the basement stairs in because those come into play later at the end of the scene, just to establish where everything is, to demonstrate where everybody is. And it did do that well. It demonstrated the location very nicely, but it lacked all the energy that I was trying to put in it. So I was conceiving something like this, where Idris is here, diddling with some kind of wires or whatever is over here, and then Barnaby's here, and then with the rafter or the floor joists in the background, it kind of creates a downward movement that way. This was supposed to be the steps and the hand railing. I'm actually modeling this off of our own basement steps, or basement, quite a bit, and it just is a good place to start because I know the physicality of it. The problem with this particular shot is that, again, she's static, and the cat's definitely static. It also doesn't demonstrate as much of the area as I want. So I gotta keep working at it, figure out, thumbnails. Thumbnails are weird for me because I like doing them on one hand, but they're always the step that I'm like, I could just skip that and go straight to the board and figure shit out while I'm drawing, but I always end up doing way more trial and error on the board that way. I'm just trying to do poses. What I really ought to do is go and look and do a bunch of research on the equipment that she's using. One of the things that I did when I was writing this, and it felt fun at the time, is to... Sorry, I'm watching my trash men run. Usually they don't do the run behind type, unless that's the recycling guys. I don't know. But I inadvertently ran myself into a corner with this script, because I was like, oh, I'll just put in something sort of somewhat generic, and then be like, oh, well, figure it out at the drawing stage. And the advantage of being a writer is that you can do something like that and just leave it up to the artist and be like, hey, figure that out, whether you mean to or not. And I've done that before for other writers. And it can be a fun challenge, but in this instance, I actually kind of pissed at myself because I'm like, what is she doing? Like, I didn't write any specifics. Like, I wanted to be kind of nebulous about what they are actually doing in this experiment. And because I left it nebulous, and because it's not really defined, that leaves a big giant gap. Is what equipment are they using? What are they really trying to accomplish? Who else is involved? What time of day, which I've established the time of day later on in the script, so that's one thing that's taken care of there. But, it could be they're changing a light bulb, and it's like they're using, like, all the equipment's blowing up because they're trying to change a light bulb, whatever. But now, like, I know that I've got all kinds of monitors going off and alarms and stuff like that, so... On top of that, I feel like I need to research what kind of other mechanical equipment are they using. And my interest is to be, again, very heavily influenced by especially the earlier Doctor Who TARDIS designs, where it was just random junk, basically, cobbled together in the TARDIS to make it look interesting. And figure out some sort of underlying motif there, but I haven't done my due diligence and figured out, what that junk will be. So I'm not sure at this stage that I'm taking the right course. I'm just doing it because it's what's familiar. Trying to figure out poses instead of trying to figure out what the hell they're actually doing. Sometimes poses are a good way to warm up. Actually, a lot of times poses are a good way to warm up. Especially if you're prone to having some physical issues with the actual drawing, like I do sometimes. I was drawing late last night, and I noticed that this finger, let's see if we can, this finger was getting really stiff, because it's like, I hold my pencil more or less like that, and it rests against that, and I guess I push against it and don't realize it, but I don't know, I'm getting to the age where I need to start paying attention to things like swelling, and I've worked myself into a corner in the last few years as far as ergonomics. Being that I'm as tall as I am, my need for ergonomics is a little different than most people, so I have to be, a few years ago I had a lot of trouble with my back, so that's not such a big deal now, but it's not as problematic, but I do have to watch it. And like yesterday, it started raining late in the evening, and So I bumped up from my normal HB lead to a B, which is what I'm using right now, just to help, because the paper absorbs the humidity and softens up quite a bit. Alright, so again, I'm rambling, I know. I've only had one cup of coffee. You're just going to have to be patient. In terms of research on this, some of the things I've already done when I was still scripting, I looked up several places on YouTube for physics, found a couple interesting places, channels. Physics Girl is one good one, especially for that one's more tailored towards younger, especially female viewers. I like that one because she demonstrates a lot of experiments on video, for good or bad. I ended up showing my girls the one where they go up in the anti-gravity, or not anti-gravity, the zero gravity plane, and showing them how they do that with the various parabolas and the way it works. That was pretty awesome. I can't think of the name of the other show. It's also physics and it's also PBS, but it's a lot more of the theoretical physics and gets very it's very jargony, so it's a little bit deep to just jump into. But I was looking for stuff because this story centers around wormholes and folding space, so I was looking up a lot of that and seeing how that works and seeing if I had the basic jargon right, which it's always been an interest to me anyways for astrophysics. So I wasn't too far off base. I ended up kind of tidying it up a little bit after my research, but not too much. But oh, there's the trash truck. I'm sure you're all super interested. Anyway, so in all the years that I've been drawing this sort of work, all the extra research and stuff, it's like the thumbnails. I'm like, oh my god, it's so much work. But then when I get into it, I go down that rabbit hole, the Google rabbit hole or the YouTube rabbit hole, and I find so much interesting stuff that it makes it totally worth it. And I highly recommend. Now, the double edge to that is that I've also gone down that rabbit hole and found shit that I have no interest in ever seeing again. For instance, a bear mauling, or the victim of, that is probably the most traumatic, probably, of all the things that I've happened upon. Don't fuck with bears was the is the moral of that particular story. So yeah, I feel like right now I'm like not there, and I need to redirect my effort a little bit pertaining to this thumbnail. What pose is she in? What is she doing? I need to do my research. I need to figure out what the equipment she's using probably really is. And once I get that done, then I'll be better off to figure out this. Pertaining to the first, the first scene of this story, the first scene of it's probably 12 pages long, I think, 12 or 13, 12, including that inside front cover, so it's labeled up to 11, page 11. One of the things that I'm doing slightly different this time is I'm penciling, which I usually do I usually do outline or break down the whole scene, get all the pages out, rough in where all the panels are, faces, etc., and make sure that everything is, something like that when I'm done. And I went ahead and did up to page 7 yesterday, just rough breakdowns, and then started working tighter into the layouts of the first couple pages. And the reason I'm doing that on this, for this many, is because it's the first time I've done that big of a scene, and also to help me sort out where each of the scene panels move, and figure out the movement from point A to point B to point C, figure out just make sure all the beats are there, make sure all the props and stuff. So basically continuity, making sure continuity is correct. I don't do super tight pencils anymore, so it doesn't take that long to do that work. But, since I'm figuring out a new set of characters, I want to make sure that I get it right. So, anyway, I know I'm rambling and I'm sorely undercaffeinated. So, anyway, that's what I'm doing right now. And I hope this wasn't too obnoxious to listen to. All right, cheers.